In the headlines, Niger military junta cuts off electricity, water supply to French embassy. Amnesty International calls for investigation into cases of missing persons and enforced disappearances arising from insurgency. President Bola Tinubu presides over inaugural meeting of the Federal Executive Council. And away from Nigeria, Sudan's RSF floats peace plan as rival army chief eyes regional trip. Hello and welcome to News Update on Trust TV. I am Abdurrahman Omar. Thanks for joining. And now we begin. As Niger military leadership has cut off electricity and water supplies to the French embassy in the capital Niamey with no food deliveries allowed, multiple sources report. The military junta has also taken similar action at the French consulate in other parts of the country. The president of the National Support Committee for the CNSP, El Issa Hassoumi, warned all partners of the French bases in Niger against supplies of fuel, water, electricity, and food products. The president says any partner who continue to help the French in the process of supplying the goods and the services will be considered enemy of the sovereign people. Reports come after a two-day deadline given by the military administration to the French ambassador Sylvain Ité, 48 hours to leave Nigerian territory, expired Sunday. However, authorities in Paris on Friday rejected the order against its ambassador, repeating that France did not recognize the military ruler's authority. In the meantime, France's ambassador to Niger will stay in the Sahel country despite pressure to leave from leaders of a recent coup, President Emmanuel Macron has said. On Monday, he also reiterated France's support to Niger's overthrown President Mohamed Bazoum, whose decision not to resign is, according to Macron, courageous. Macron also said Paris would support any military action by the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, in Niger. The French leader, who was speaking during a major foreign policy speech to ambassadors gathered in Paris, confirmed that French envoy Sylvain Ité was listening in from Niger's capital, Niamey, despite being given a 48 hours deadline to leave the country last Friday. Bazoum was toppled on July 26th and has been detained, along with his family, at the presidential palace in a coup that has been condemned by France and most of Niger's neighbors. Meanwhile, the federal government has been charged to investigate all cases of missing persons, including the enforced disappearances arising from insurgency. The call was part of the commemoration of the yearly solidarity and campaign for victims of enforced disappearance across the country in Maiduguri, the Borno State capital. Adamu Ngolde has more.
Speaking at the event, Country Director Amnesty International Malam Isa Sanusi said there was need to intensify the campaign against the government's deafening silence on the fate of victims of enforced disappearances in the region. Need to intensify the campaign against the government's deafening silence on the fate of victims of enforced disappearances in the region. He said the number of missing and enforced disappearances was much higher, urging the authorities to implement the Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance effectively.
We are calling on the Nigerian government to investigate all enforced disappearances of the thousands of people since the beginning of the insurgency in the northeast Nigeria, and trace the whereabouts of women, children, and older people whose whereabouts have not been known for as much as 14 years, some 8 years.
Beside the law, he urged the federal government to ensure through investigation of enforced disappearances and ensure that suspects are prosecuted in accordance with international standards. The director Al-Amin Foundation, Hamsatu Al-Amin, said the foundation has recorded over 23 missing persons during the 14-year crisis in the northeast.
As I am speaking now, we have registered over 23,000 people missing. But the heartwarming thing is that recently, in the last 2 years, the leadership of particularly the Nigerian military has started releasing some of these victims to us.
Some of the victims urged the government at all levels to investigate all cases of missing persons, including the enforced disappearances arising from the insurgency since 2009 to date.
I will speak on behalf of the people of our town of Andara in Kumshe Bama town. About 9 years ago, my brother and my husband's brother went out, but up till now, no one knows what happened to them. Therefore, we are urging the government at all levels to intervene so that to know the future of our brothers and sisters.
They arrested them in Bama in our home. They took them to Bama Barracks. From there, they transferred them to the Maimalari Barracks. From then, we have no idea of them.
Stakeholders urge Nigerian authorities to also provide effective protection for persons who file complaints of their missing persons and enforce disappearances, as well as families of the disappeared person. From Maiduguri, Adamu Ngulde, Trust TV News.
Now, in spite of all measures taken to cushion the effect of fuel subsidy removal, many IDPs in Katsina are struggling to make ends meet. Despite their misfortunes, which they describe as hard to endure, IDPs says they are not benefiting from the distribution of the palliatives by government. This has forced many of the IDPs who are overburdened by debt to beg and engage in other menial jobs to earn a living.
A large percentage of the IDPs were displaced from their communities by incessant attacks by bandits. Many of these women and children left their ravaged communities to Katsina and other cities without any of their personal belongings. I'm looking at several options, and now I have decided to go back to my village to face the risk of either being killed or kidnapped. No matter what, I believe it will be better for me than living in this unbearable condition. Look at us. Do you see any sign of good living here? Bandits rustled all our domestic animals, raped our women and children, dispossessed us of all our belongings, and killed some members of our families. We are here because we don't have any other option, and we are suffering seriously. To these depressed-looking IDPs, the main priority here is food and rent, while school for their children is a secondary consideration. This suggests that the future of the next generation is already in peril if nothing is done to arrest the situation. If I tell you that we are in trouble, you will not believe me, but this is the reality. For instance, any individual who limits his thinking to what he will eat will never be productive because his thoughts are dominated by food. Number one priority is food. Second priority is food. Third priority is food. In this digital age, how would he be productive? The intensity of their hardship is evident in their appearance and the uninhabitable rented houses they occupy. The IDPs lament that they have made several requests to the government in the past, seeking for assistance, but to no avail. They are hoping that the story will change and that the Diko Umaru Rada administration will come to their rescue. The estimated population of IDPs living in unofficial camps in Katsina surpass 1 million, while many others squat or hanging around filling stations, bank premises, and other public institutions across the 34 local government headquarters of Katsina State. Observers are calling for special consideration to the IDPs during the ongoing distribution of palliatives and other special interventions to cushion the effects of hardship and give them a sense of belonging. Abdullahi Ismail Ahmadi, Trust Television News, Katsina.
Now, unidentified hoodlums have invaded the house of a chieftain of the Social Democratic Party, SDP, simply identified as Mustafa Imewe at Emu Opada village in Dekina local government in Kogi State and set his car ablaze. Reports say the incident happened around midnight in the weekend. The local said after their nefarious act, the hoodlums retreated to an isolated place in the area and thereafter left for an unknown destination. According to a resident, Joel Adegbe, the suspected hoodlums came into the town when residents have retired for the night, shooting sporadically to scare people from coming out to challenge them. It was said that when the coast was clear, neighbors ran out in the night to put out the raging inferno, but felt as major components in the car were burnt beyond redemption before their intervention. They said Director General of the SDP, Ibrahim Jibrin, was reported to have led party faithful to the town on Sunday afternoon to sympathize with the victim over the attack. The Kogi State Police Command is yet to issue a statement on the incident. Meanwhile, the National Commission for the Control of Small Arms and Light Weapons Proliferation said it has concluded arrangements to employ and train about 3,000 personnel across the Federation to tackle illegal arms proliferation. Acting Director General of the Commission, Adejore Adebenero, who disclosed this in a statement on Sunday, said a total of about 7,000 personnel will be engaged in each state of the Federation and the FCT. He said they are going to employ about 3,000 personnel across the country to make the country a safer place, noting that this will also reduce the unemployment rate in the country. He said anyone interested should be on the lookout for the guidelines on the national dailies. Now, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has presided over his first inaugural meeting of the Federal Executive Council FEC. The meeting, which is the first under the administration of President Tinubu, started around 12 noon in the council chamber of the State House, Abuja, with the rendition of the national anthem. In a brief remark at the beginning of the meeting, the president charged the ministers on performance, stating that his cabinet cannot afford to fail Nigerians. At the meeting, where the Vice President, Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Head of the Civil Service of the Federation, National Security Advisor, Chief of Staff to the President, and all the ministers. Recall that after the confirmation of the appointment of the 45 ministers by the Senate, they were sworn in by the President on the 21st of August 2023. The FEC meeting was still in progress at the time of filing this report. Now, Police Service Commission PSC has ordered 4 Deputy Inspector Generals of Police to immediately proceed on compulsory retirement. The affected senior police officers include Malam Muhammad, Moses Ambakina, Jitubo, Hafiz Muhammad Inwa, and Adeleke Adehinka Bode. The spokesman of the commission, Eke Chikuani, who disclosed this to journalists in Abuja on Monday, said the commission gave the order in the exercise of its statutory powers. He explained that the order became imperative because PSC had expected those DIGs who were seniors in rank to the acting IGP, Kayode Ebetoko, immediately after his appointment will apply to voluntarily retire. The PSC spokesman said such expected application was in consonance with the revered tradition of discipline and regimented culture of the Nigerian police force. The PSC, however, approved the appointment of 4 Assistant Inspectors General of Police to the rank of DIGs, which will be subjected to the ratification by the board of the commission to replace the retired DIGs. Those new DIGs include Ibrahim Sani Kaoji, Daniel Sokari, Pedro Ayuba Epeji, and Usman Nagogo. Now, in spite of campaigns by individuals and organizations, the menace of open defecation is still common in Benue State. Jimmy Azande speaks to residents on solutions to end the menace.
Many of those involved in this act are ignorant of the environmental hazards caused by open defecation.
Lack of public toilets, and then secondly, the how would I place it now? Illiteracy. Also, why I said illiteracy is because even the literates at times they fail to provide those amenities. But then I see illiteracy as the cause, in the sense that at times when people build, they decide not to include toilets in their building plans, which at the end results to using public areas.
On the side of ladies, open defecation or using unclean toilets can give infections to ladies. for they are open. They are open. If they sit and they defecate and or urinate, it can cause disease.
The Makurdi residents feel the government is also not doing enough to curtail open defecation.
And on open defecation, I see it's very bad. You know, it's very bad when you move around and see people defecating openly. And yes, for sure, laws should be made about this often people's defecating openly. And for the past time, we have been seeing something like the government implemented something like WashCom. The WashCom was somehow doing something good, but I think it's good for when a law is implemented, there should be a close monitoring to make sure these activities are being carried on.
Of course, open defecation as a source of environmental pollution should be blamed on the government, but not on the government alone. The individuals too has a role to play in this thing. Open defecation is a source of environmental pollution. Now, the government as an institution, a government should be able to provide public toilets in towns, but in case of places like villages, where you have houses, people have houses in villages, there are no toilets there, they go outside defecating.
They urge the government to step up efforts to make communities open defecation free for a human-healthy ecosystem. Jimmy Azandi, Trust TV News, Makurdi.
Now, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, and the Court of Conduct Bureau, CCB, have launched investigations into the activities of the Kano State Public Complaints and Anti-Corruption Commission, PCACC, and its chairman. EFCC, in a letter signed by its Deputy Director, Cybercrime and Other Related Offences, Dr. Bello, asked the chairman of the PCACC, Mui Magajiri Mingadu, to send PCACC's Director of Finance and Accounts to appear at its headquarters in Abuja on Monday. EFCC requested that the PCACC Director of Finance and Accounts should come along with the details of total funds released by the Office of the Accountant General of Kano State from 2019 to 2021 fiscal year. Details of total funds released by the Kano State Ministry of Local Government from 2019 to 2021, including contracts executed and details of beneficiary accounts. On its part, the CCB, in its letter dated August 14, said it was investigating a case of alleged violation of the Code of Conduct for Public Officers against some staff of the PCACC and asked the Commission's chairman to furnish it with certified true copies, CTC, of detailed information on the following: all contractual undertaken by the Commission from 2016 to date, as well as all records of recoveries, forfeiture, and management of the same from 2016 till date. Records of all financial allocations to the Commission, including donor agency funds from 2016 to date, and status of all the Commission's buildings across the local governments of the state. Meanwhile, the chairman of PCACC, Mui Magajiri Mingadu, told Daily Trust that the anti-graft agency will cooperate with the two federal agencies in their investigations. You are watching News Update on Trust TV. Coming off after the break, we take a look at possible return of Granite Pyramid. Details of this and more after the break. You stay with us. Welcome back, and if you are just joining us, this is the news update on Trust TV, and here is a recap of some of our top stories. Niger military junta cuts off electricity, water supply to French embassy. And Amnesty International calls for investigation into the cases of missing persons and enforced disappearances arising from insurgency. Now moving on to other stories. A case of chickenpox has been reportedly detected at the Agabe Internal Displaced Persons IDPs camp in West Local Government Area, Benue State. The Trust had reported 10 children infected with measles at the same camp last week. Iba Jacob, who is the chairman of Agabe IDP camp in West Local Government Area, said that this case of the chickenpox was found by some medical doctors from a nearby private hospital. He said the doctors were the ones who broke the news to some government officials who visited the camp at the end weekend. The government officials who, according to the camp manager, were from the State Emergency Management Agency, SEMA, had visited to ascertain whether the cases of measles, other illnesses, and hunger reported in the media were through. Now, the groundnut is among the cereal products produced by many farmers, especially in northern Nigeria. In this report, our correspondent Abubakar Abdullahi looked at the importance of the cereal crop to the public. Take a look.
Harvest of groundnut involves a series of activities such as propagation through seeds. The seeds are shielded just 2 weeks before planting. Groundnut seeds are either grown in the nursery, then transplanted to the main area, or they are directly sown in the main field. Most of the groundnut seeds takes 3 months or little above to mature for consumption. As an essential product, groundnut can be consumed fresh, dried, roasted, depending on the user of the farm item. A farmer who shared his experience on the groundnut plantation said if proper attention is given to producers of such products, it will add value to their activities.
Virtually everybody eats groundnut in one way or the other, either through the oil, or through the grinded one, or through every other means. And as a farmer, I realized that the major challenge we have with groundnut is the storage. It's a very sensitive crop. If it is not well stored, it can lead to damages. So we have that major challenge with storing groundnut. And that has a way of also trying to affect the preservation. If it's not preserved, after a short while, you won't have groundnut again.
The farmer further said if not for the challenges of farm shortages due to crises in some communities and hunger, which often force farmers not to store their products, the groundnut pyramid of 60s can return to the country. Musa Abdullahi, a groundnut trader at Lafia Cereal Crop Market, said they got supplies by either going to farms or farmers transported the product to them for exchange. He said rather than store the grain, they prefer selling it to their customers outside the state because groundnut can effectively be stored only when it is dried.
We load and take the groundnut to Kano to sell at the available market price. We have not started storing because the groundnut has not dried yet. We can only store dried one.
Groundnut, as you do know, is essential part of our meal. We use it for a lot of things, for kunu. We call it kunu jeda in this part of the country. We use it for soup. We use it as meal. You eat it raw, you cooked it, before meal. So it is very important and essential part of our meal in this part of the country.
He said despite the perishable nature of groundnut, families use available facility to store it for future consumption. He called on government to support groundnut farmers by providing storage facilities for them.
Now, away from Nigeria, the head of the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF, Mohammed Hamdan Daglo, has proposed a plan for lasting peace in war-torn Sudan as his rival army chief is expected to embark on a regional trip. Daglo on Sunday published a 10-point plan by the paramilitary group that proposes new negotiations to end a war that began in mid-April, a war he claimed the RSF did not seek nor initiate. Daglo floated the idea of a non-symmetrical federal system that would represent Sudan's regional, cultural, and ethnic diversity after elections to form a civilian government and end structural violence, against broad segments of Sudanese citizens. Significantly, he proposed a new apolitical and unified Sudanese army built from merging existing forces that will have civilian oversight and conform to internationally recognized foundations. But the general's proposals, which are titled Sudan Reborn and appear to be in line with international calls for shaping the country's future, hardly correspond with the realities on the ground. As the devastating war enters its 20th week, more than 4.6 million people have been forced to flee their homes since the start of the war. According to the UN figures that see more than 1 million have fled to neighboring countries, including Chad and Egypt. Now finally on sporting news, it was indeed a Saturday for Nigerian footballer as former African champions Enyimba and Remo Stars were kicked out of this year's CAF Champions League after losing yesterday's return legs of the first preliminary round matches at home. At the Aba Township Stadium, the reigning Nigeria Premier League NPFL champions, Enyimba FC, who needed only a goal to progress to the second preliminary round of the Champions League, were forced to a goalless by Al Ahly Benghazi of Libya. It will be recalled that Enyimba had lost the first leg of the encounter last week 3-4 and needed to win by at least a goal to nil to move to the next round. Unfortunately, after dominating proceedings in both halves, the visitors, who deployed solid defensive tactics, stood firm to clinch the important away victory. Since 2015, this is the first time that Enyimba have been eliminated at this stage. They had won the prestigious trophy back-to-back in 2003 and 2004 when Felix Enyasiagu was the chairman of the club. In Ikine, it was another whaling side gnashing of teeth as 2023 NPFL runners-up Remo Stars also exited the Champions League after losing 2-3 on penalties to Midyama of Ghana. Although Remo Stars won the return leg 1-0 for a 1-1 aggregate, they could not hold their nerves in the penalty shootout that ensured paving the way for the Ghanaians to progress at their expense. And with that, we have come to the end of the Trust TV's news update. Do not forget to follow us across all our media platforms and our YouTube live stream. I am Abdurrahman Omar. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.